Greetings, my friends. Mkwann here. Gregorian calendar date November 14th, Gregorian calendar year 2024. And, well, let's just jump right in. I think it'll be easier to describe what we're going to go through at the end than trying to encapsulate that story now. So, we're going to begin by looking at areas that resonate. And this has been a theme I've been talking about for a long time, but really in the last couple of, like maybe the last 6 videos I've put out, I've talked about there being a resonance between the island of Hispaniola and the Susquehanna River. I've tied in resonance between Hurricane Helene and the 1896 Cedar Keys hurricane. Also talked about Hurricane Milton and calendar year 2023's Day of the Dead. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about this real-time occurrences with a resonation, that's not the right word, a resonator, between Austin, Texas and Columbia, Pennsylvania, and then specifically the Doug Sam Hill and High Point Scenic Vista. And the reason why I'm doing this, like what's driving this is I was just down in Austin, Texas, and I'm returned to Pennsylvania now, and in the time since, I've had an opportunity to kind of unpack all that happened. So I went down to Austin to be a guest on a podcast, like a large platform podcast. There are a lot of viewers. Alex Zek's The Way Forward, if you're familiar with it. And he only has guests come. He doesn't do like Zoom interviews anymore. He does it all in person. And I used it as an opportunity to get to Austin because I wanted to be on this podcast. But also my good friend Emily Moyer lives in Austin, and it provided an opportunity to spend time with her and Laura. And this is also a long time coming, as I meant to go down to Austin in 2022 and was at the last minute unable to do so. So this was, in a way, a long time coming. And if you're familiar with some of the work that Emily and I have done, we used to do 2 regular shows, one called Project Kids, the other called Playing the Glass Bead Game. A theme which we covered many times in those shows was this resonance between Austin, Texas, and really the Susquehanna River and the 40th parallel. And I was able to experience it through Emily's descriptions, and we did a lot of map play, but I hadn't been there physically. And so when I came and visited her, she wanted to take me to a lot of the locations which she thought was significant, primarily being this Doug Sam Hill path, and how this was a mirror of a resonator with, I don't know what words to really use to describe that there's a connection between this hill and High Point Scenic Vista, which I've talked about many, many, many times on this channel. So here we see this is where this Doug Sam Hill is, and it is in a park across the street from downtown Austin. And Austin has recently emerged as a tech hub, a tech nodal point, as many of the traditional Silicon Valley companies have either relocated or opened up large facilities or offices in Austin. And here we could see, right, this hill is right across from where probably the largest company, which is downtown Austin, is located, which is Google's Austin location. I'll show you a picture of that in a moment. And we're going to touch upon this in a moment, but Austin's other really strong connections with like this technological world which is unfolding before us is Elon Musk has a major footprint in Austin. Not only is he living there, but Tesla headquarters is there, and I think there's a whole bunch of other Elon Musk stuff. We'll get to that in a moment. And then also Austin has emerged as the podcast capital of the world, as the largest, and then some of the other most large or most listened to podcasts are recorded in Austin. So, okay. So here's an image of this Doug Sam Hill. This is what it looks like. We can see it right here. This building right here is the Google building. This is downtown Austin. And there is undoubtedly a similarity between this and High Point Scenic Vista. And so let's go. There are many pieces to this puzzle, so I'm just going to kind of begin to add them into this equation, but I'll be coming back to them because their meaning or their significance will become deeper as more and more of the ingredients are added. So this hill is named for Doug Sam, and Doug Sam was a very well-known musician who was based out of Austin, Texas, and he died prematurely. And one of the ways in which he was honored was with this hill, this mound. This is called it's named after him. And one of the things which I just thought was interesting is just the spelling of his name, of his last name, is very similar to Samhain, how Samhain is spelled, S-A-M-H-S-A-H-M. And Samhain is the Gaelic term for the festival that is held at the midpoint between the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice. This is also known as Halloween, Day of the Dead, All Hallows Eve, All Saints Day. There are many names for this moment in time. And traditionally, this moment in time is said to be when the veil between the visible and the invisible, between the living and the dead, is most thin. Whether or not that's an actual description of the realm we live in, I don't know. But I do know that it is held in consciousness through multiple cultures that this particular day, which is an objective day, like objective meaning that there really is something unique at this time period, just as it relates to the solar cycle of going from solstice to solstice. So there's a truth to that. So the first thing is just the name significance and the fact that the arrival date, which when I came to Austin on November 6th, it was just a handful of days past this Samhain time period, and November 6th also happens to be the birth date of Doug Samhain. Excuse me. So, all right, let's go and look and compare this to High Point Scenic Vista, just so you can see the similarities. So this here is High Point Scenic Vista. It's much, much larger. This looks like it could be like an actual mound site. I don't know if it is, but it certainly is in that sort of scale of when we see mounds. High Point, I've always felt like it could be a mound. This is a very significant location. It was the headquarters, if you will, of the Susquehannock tribe of people. But it also is in a very hilly part of Pennsylvania, so hills are natural, seemingly naturally occurring, and this is a high point for, where it's located. And here we see this. This is the Doug Sam Hill. You can see the similar kind of walkway up there. And then at the top, this is High Point Scenic Vista. This is what it looks like at the top of the hill. A little bit more grandiose in scale as compared to the one in Austin. And then here we can see the side-by-side comparisons. This is what the top of High Point Scenic Vista looks like, and this is what the top of the Doug Sam, am I saying that right? Yeah, Doug Sam Hill. That just doesn't come off the tongue very naturally. We could see there's a similarity, and we could see right here, south, east, west, north. This is a compass rose. If you look closely here, that's an S. There we can see the east. And though this isn't actually a compass rose in terms of its traditional showing, we can see this right here, this being the compass rose. Texas is placed in the middle of the circle. So we can see the similarities. We could see similarities in maybe the pavers and so forth. So there's an obvious sort of connection that way. And so right here, I made this slide many, many years ago, and I called this stretch along the Susquehanna River the Goddess Corridor. This is 3 Mile Island right here. This is Marietta, Pennsylvania. This is Columbia. And right here is High Point Scenic Vista. And so as I indicated a moment ago that the life that we're sharing together, the unfolding of life that we're sharing together, the timeline, if you will, we're seeing that Austin is emerging as a city of much, much greater significance on the worldwide culture. Austin is the capital of Texas, if I'm correct. Interestingly, this right here is the capital of Pennsylvania. But as Austin is becoming more ingrained with the international tech companies, its influence has increased in terms of its role affecting the rest of the collective consciousness, the world we're living in through these technology companies being located here. So we want to go back right here and look at this area. This part of Pennsylvania is it's not a high population area. Yes, Harrisburg is located here. This is probably like 30 miles. This is the distance from here to here. But this town, Columbia, which borough, it's a borough, is its actual municipality designation, probably has a population of around 8,000 people. Marietta around 2,000 people. And then really there's not much in this general area. But if we were to at least play around with the idea that the many worlds interpretation model of quantum mechanics is an accurate description of how reality works. And I personally, I lean into it. I can't say for certain that's how the world works, but it certainly seems to make sense. What the many worlds interpretation model says is that in the overall realm which we experience life in, that every single time a decision is made, whether that's an individual decision or a collective decision, that a certain reality comes into manifest, and there is another corresponding reality where a different decision was reached at that decision point, and that reality exists somewhere. And that reality is just as real as the reality that we're experiencing. But the only difference is what we're experiencing is where our consciousness is focused on. So that being said, the point of all that is the reason this town is called Columbia is back when, this is the history that we're told, back when the United States Capitol was in the city of Philadelphia, and a new permanent capital for the then early United States was being formed. When the United States was in its early stages, and a capital city location for a capital city was being was just an idea, there was a short list of locations in which could be the capital city. And what we know now as Washington, D.C., was that obviously is the life that we're living together. But on that short list of possibilities was Columbia, Pennsylvania. In fact, that's the reason why it's called Columbia, Pennsylvania, as kind of a public relations stint of the people in Pennsylvania, or in Columbia, Pennsylvania, who wanted this town to be the nation's capital. So if many worlds interpretation has any validity, we can assume that there is a realm which Columbia became the capital city. And if that's the case, well, then this area, which I just described as not being particularly significant in terms of population, well, in that realm, it probably looks very different. I used to live outside of Washington, D.C. in Arlington, Virginia, and I know what that looks like, and I can go in my imagination and feel what would that area look like had it not become the nation's capital. And I can do the opposite to Columbia, Pennsylvania, and kind of get a sense of what Columbia would look like had it become, or in the realm and the universe where Columbia is the capital of the United States in that alternative history. And I guess what I'm trying to bring into your your thought construct is what I'm trying to paint up is that there are seemingly these ways in which different areas resonate with different times, with maybe different timelines, and there's a seeming bleed through. And there are many ways which there can be resonance. There's like infinite ways, like you as an individual, me as an individual, is a nodal point of consciousness which can resonate with all sorts of different things. So there is this connection which I just demonstrated through the High Point Scenic Vista, which is located right here, and Austin. And we can see Austin's timeline becoming something, and we can kind of look at this area also resonating with Austin. In fact, the entire thesis behind the Susquehanna mystery is how the Susquehanna River theoretically is in resonance with everything in the modern paradigm, because it was used as a large-scale altar built upon the oldest river to introduce globalism, computer technology, and distribution of electricity to the rest of the world, because the first fruits of each of those were laid upon the altar of the Susquehanna in a grandiose form of Kabbalistic river goddess worship. I mean, that's the, that's the Susquehanna mystery, if you will, in a nutshell. And as Austin is becoming an epicenter, a nodal point of global technology, there is a resonance between the river and the Colorado River, and through the High Point Scenic Vista, and through the Doug Sam Hill, there's these resonance. So where that is really showing itself most clearly right now was, and I brought this up in the last video I made called CAI Data Centers on the Susquehanna. And there's a lot of purposeful wordplay in that title if you haven't figured it out. I shared the story how Microsoft just struck a deal with the energy company which owns 3 Mile Island, right here, the notorious nuclear power plant, and Microsoft is going to fund that, or pay to have that nuclear power plant, which has been shut down for 5 years, bring it back online, and Microsoft is going to use all of that power to nuclear power from the Otis River, or connected to the Otis River, to fuel their quantum computer data centers. And those are all the touch points which I've been talking about in the Susquehanna mystery for at least 8 years. And so to see that come into fruition, was significant. So let's go and bring this little piece of technology data into the story. And it's Elon Musk's Neuralink. First off, I'm going to go and show you that they have, though Neuralink is headquartered in California, they're building manufacturing space and build an office space right here in Austin. You can see this right here. And that's happening, that is a link between Neuralink and Austin. And then more timely, let's see, this article came out 2024. More timely, September 18th, 2024, we see that Neuralink received an FDA approval for, one of the things which they want to do in people's brains, this blind sight. We can even go down the name of blind sight of, what that's pointing to. But nonetheless, I want to show this correlation in time and technology between these two locations. So Neuralink happening, or their latest FDA approval, which is a pretty big deal, happening on September 18th. And then this correspondence with the Microsoft deal on 3 Mile Island for its power, or to power its data centers. That article came out in September 20th, 2024. So, and this isn't an article, excuse me. This is a press release, just as this is a press release. So this press release was released 2 days before this press release. And so we can see the technological correspondence and the timeliness correspondence between these locations. And now I want to add to the mix that on October 24th, 2024, there was another press release. And these are all like really, really, excuse me, my throat's dry, large-scale technology infrastructure companies to various degrees. We have the Microsoft data center, where the infrastructure is more so on the internet, if you will, or on, you know, the internet is really just the infrastructure to share data. You know, that's where all of the nodal points, it goes through the internet. And then we see here, which is an infrastructure, which is really bringing the internet into the brain. Like, this is a real transhumanist movement. This is the infrastructure of how the internet can get into the physical body. And then we've got this GlaxoSmithKline, their October 24th announcement is dealing with a vaccine manufacturer, or a manufacturing plant. And what we see right here is today, October 24th, is announced that GlaxoSmithKline is putting up $800 million to build a state-of-the-art drug substance manufacturing and drug product manufacturing plant in Marietta, Pennsylvania. Right here. September 24th. No, September 20th. October 24th. High Point Scenic Vista. Right here, Elon Musk, Texas. This is September 18th. And when you look at what they're saying is going to happen here is the new multi-purpose facility will be capable of manufacturing sterile liquid vaccines and medicines for which there is an ever-increasing demand. This facility will also house state-of-the-art research and development pilot plant to manufacture medicines for clinical trials. There will be also part of it will be dedicated to manufacturing products based upon the company's MAPS technology. Funny word there. And so this is a big deal. It says right here, this is the president from GlaxoSmithKline, that this is going to be their largest single investment in manufacturing made in the United States. And keep in mind, GlaxoSmithKline, they are a global pharmaceutical company, and they're also one of the 3 pharmaceutical companies that were making the COVID vaccine. There was Moderna, there was J&J, and there was GlaxoSmithKline. And whatever the whole COVID vaccine was, because it was an mRNA vaccine, it was different. It was different than anything else. In fact, you know, I'm not an expert in this, but I recall there was a lot of discussion saying that this isn't a vaccine at all. This is something completely different. So this MAPS technology, which they're talking about, is you know, I'm getting a little bit outside of my area of expertise, so I'm going to use my words correctly. I want to speak to as accurately as I can. This MAPS technology is connected to the development of whatever those COVID vaccines were. In fact, these are going to be the next batch of vaccines. This is why it's a state-of-the-art facility. Using similar or next level technology in terms of how it's working within the body. So this is also from this same press release, and they say this: the roar I hear is the next stage of the rocket firing. Interesting language, particularly as we are making a connection with Elon Musk via Austin, because Elon Musk also has SpaceX, so like rocket firing. MAPS technology and the new age of vaccine development. Like new age also plays in, if you're deeply familiar with my talk on the Susquehanna mystery, the purpose of that altar is to usher in a new age, quote unquote, based upon the story of the age of Aquarius. That's what globalism and electricity and computer technology were. The introductions of those were to embody the qualities associated with the new age, with the age of Aquarius. And this is all in the narrative, the subconscious narrative, which is the occult the occult narrative, which is being pushed by the paradigm. So here we see right here, they're talking about the MAPS technology and blah, 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 antigens. You could go and look at this if you're curious to see what they say. But what really jumped out for me was how it was saying how this MAPS technology, the unique way of linking the antigens together in a modular fashion, like connecting Lego blocks, is designed to overcome the complex chemistry of traditional vaccines. This is the MAPS technology. And so I've never even seen it played. I certainly haven't played it, but I know it exists. And that is the game Minecraft. And I'm pretty certain like Lego building blocks is kind of like how the game is played. And so when we begin to take in consideration all of these cutting edge technologies which are flowing within one another, which are connected to one another on a deeper level, on the surface level, to the mainstream mind, they may not look connected at all, but for those who can see the broader connection, for those that can see the magic 3D art of it all, Neuralink and Elon Musk, Microsoft AI, or quantum computer data centers connected to 3 Mile Island and the Susquehanna River, and then this MAPS technology also on the Susquehanna River. Like, we can just see how they're all in connection. This is where the quantum computing is, 3 Mile Island. This is GlaxoSmithKline's plant right here, right in Marietta. And then right here is the High Point Scenic Vista, which on one way or the other, in some reality, is just flowing energy back and forth from right here to here. So let's pivot a little bit, because, if you're familiar with my stories, my research is never just like research, like let me go and research something. My particular take in this storytelling is a gonzo approach, which is like, how does my personal story intertwine with a larger story? And again, this is, anyone can do this. It's a perspective of reality. And the perspective is understanding your individual thread of life and how it is woven into the larger tapestry of life. And then becoming more and more aware of that push-pull relationship. So I'm going to get into the Day of the Dead, Pennsylvania Dutch, Halloween, and Baron Samedi. Tie it all back to what we just discussed. So I made a couple videos recently, this one called the 128 Hertz frequency, this one called Hurricane Milton, mirroring of timelines and oddities. And in both of these videos, I make reference to the Day of the Dead, and primarily in this video right here. And I make reference to an even earlier video, which I made in, I don't think I've got the date of that here. So this video, this came out This came out in November 2023. It says 11 months ago when I took this screenshot. But what this video was about burial mounds, the Day of the Dead, and a chance meeting. And this was down in Florida. That's what this video was all about, was how this video, which came out 3-4 weeks ago, connects back to the occurrences of Hurricane Milton and the Day of the Dead video and experiences I had in St. Petersburg the previous year. So the point of all of that, and the point I'm bringing this up, is the idea of Day of the Dead had been really in my mind in the days and the week leading up to this year's Halloween, this year's Day of the Dead, because I was able to see this connection between the previous year's Day of the Dead and this video which I just made in Hurricane Milton, and I was curious. I'm like, what's going to happen this year? Like, this is building up in my life. Like, you know, there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of focus in my own experience around the Day of the Dead. And I'm getting ready to go into that phase, that time period in which the supposed veil is the thinnest. But, that being like, well, arguable. But what is definitely true is this period in which we go into the final stages of the solar cycle as we begin to wind down to the winter solstice, when there's the least amount of light during a sunrise to sunrise event, or the least amount of light in a day. So, all right. Day of the Dead, this is a holiday traditionally celebrated on November 1st and 2nd, the days after Halloween. It's widely observed in Mexico. And there's a correspondence. Day of the Dead is probably a blending of what they're saying here, of maybe Aztec celebrations or festivals tied into, more European, Western Christian celebrations of All Saints Days or All Souls Day, which happens at the same time, which is, corresponds with the Gaelic festival of Samhain, November 1st. They're all like the same sort of festivals, right? I talked a little bit about that. It's a thing. So as I was becoming aware that I'm stepping into this time period, this is where I'm living. This right here is where the farm is, and what this area is right in the heart of the land of the Pennsylvania Dutch. This map looks like it's probably from the 50s. Here's a close-up. This is exactly where I am, kind of near. Probably the biggest towns would be Reading, Pennsylvania, or Allentown, but I'm really, really remote. The town I'm in isn't even on this map. It's called Kempton, which is in between Lenhardsville, Hamburg, and Kutztown. There's Kutztown. This is where I am. And this area is, a high concentration of the Pennsylvania Dutch. Pennsylvania Dutch. Dutch doesn't mean like Dutch from Holland. Dutch is more, it's spelled that way, but it's implying Deutsch, as in Germany, like Deutschland. The Pennsylvania Germans is what the Pennsylvania Dutch actually is, which is, maybe purposefully confusing. I don't know. But the Amish, the Mennonites, Baptist Brethren, the Moravians, they're all part of the general Pennsylvania Dutch moniker of people. And here I am in Pennsylvania Dutch, in the Pennsylvania Dutch epicenter. Like, you go around and you can hear people who aren't Amish, who aren't, perhaps they're Mennonite, but when they speak, you can hear that Pennsylvania Dutch accent. And if you've never heard it before, it's unlike it's very distinct. It's unlike anything else you would have heard of. So just to give you kind of like a point of reference, this is where I am, really in the middle of nowhere. This is like a 10-minute car ride, and this is a 10-minute car ride. This is the closest restaurant, and this is the closest general store, which is the closest to like maybe having a grocery store. This is what the restaurant is. Deutsche Ecke means Dutch corner, traditional Pennsylvania Dutch cuisine, and also kind of the home of a former Pennsylvania Dutch library. This is the general store. Happens to be called Wanamaker's. I feel quite at home being, with my last name. And this is kind of what the area is like. This is Pennsylvania Dutch area. So here, and I'm living in this area during this very, very if you want to get into like mystical or magical, if we want to use words like that, this is when there is an acceptance, if you will, culturally, that we can really lean into the woo, if you will. So let's go here. Pennsylvania has always been a place dedicated to religious freedom, at least in theory. The protections extend not only to traditional religions, but also folk magic and witchcraft. The practice of folk magic was so ingrained in Pennsylvania that at one time the state officially licensed Hexenmeisters, or the spellcasters of the Pennsylvania Dutch. Like I'm in the witch world. Like I'm in the magic world, and I'm in the magic world in the most magical time, right? Like, when it's this most liminal space. So if you don't know what a hex sign is, what a hexmeister is, hex signs, sacred and celestial symbolism of the Pennsylvania Dutch Barn stars. So these types of, if you will, sigils are painted throughout the region on the barns. The signs are meant to protect the structures and things inside them from evil and misfortune. So that implies that there is an understanding that, one, that there is maybe just evil in general or misfortune, and even two, that there are other people who are practicing malfeasance with their magic, trying to cause misfortune. This guy, in talking about in 1924 in writing Pennsylvania Beautiful, refers to these hexes as Kabbalistic marks. Here's a picture of a beautiful Pennsylvania Dutch barn, and you can see the hex signs painted right upon them. Here's an article talking about powwowing among the Pennsylvania Dutch. Known in Pennsylvania Dutch as brockerij, the folk healing practice of powwowing is thought to draw upon the power of God to heal all manner of physical and spiritual ills. Controversy over powwowing came to a climax in 1929 with the York Hex murder trial. This happened right near High Point Scenic Vista, in which and what this trial was, or what happened, what the controversy was one powwower killed another who he believed placed a hex on him. Here's a book that came out. It's a Llewellyn, if you're familiar with that publisher. It's a Llewellyn book. It came out in 1997. Hexcraft, Dutch country magic. The roots of American witchcraft can be found in a 17th century settler tradition comprising witchcraft and Native American magics. So they're talking about the blending of Pennsylvania Dutch magic with the indigenous folks of Pennsylvania, which would primarily be Lenape, Iroquois, and maybe even theoretically Susquehannock. The book analyzes the history and growth of this elusive powwow tradition called powwow. So I'm just trying to demonstrate that this area is rich in whatever you think of what a magic is. And this is where I am. I'm like there physically, and then also on timeline, I'm there at a very sort of magical time period. The Amish aren't generally thought of to celebrate Halloween. In fact, Halloween, and Halloween sounds a lot like Hollywood, doesn't it? The Amish are said to protest it. In fact, there are only a couple things. They protest the celebration of Halloween. They're not known for protesting, and they're not known for voting, but, you know, I just don't think that's the case. I just think that maybe that's an outer surface sort of things, that what's done behind closed doors might be different. Here it says the Amish are discouraged from voting. What just happened in this most recent presidential election was a national story became that the Amish decided to vote in unprecedented numbers in this presidential election, which also occurred right after Samhain, which occurred right after Halloween, whatever you want to call it. Here's a picture of it. The Amish horse and buggy makes its way towards a polling location in Leacock Township Municipal Building in Intercourse, Pennsylvania. Particularly in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, you'll see a lot of the named places of the Amish has sexual innuendo. You know, people don't normally think of the Amish as doing, you know, sex magic, or at least being playful with sexuality, but obviously they are by looking at all of the names. You know, Intercourse, Leacock are just like a short list of, you know, many of the colorful names found in Lancaster County associated with Amish villages. We also know that Groundhog's Day is a Pennsylvania Dutch tradition, and Groundhog's Day takes place on February 2nd, which corresponds with the midpoint between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. That's known as Imbolc, just like Samhain is the midpoint between the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice. So if the Amish are practicing this, of course they're practicing this. This is just being done in closed, you know, behind closed doors. These here are images of what, you know, your traditional witch's coven looks like. This here are images of Amish women in traditional dress, and you can see obvious similarities. So the night of Halloween, this is where I was, and I drove down here to Boyertown. It's about a 40-minute car ride, and I'm driving really right around midnight, too. I'm driving through the heart of this Pennsylvania Dutch area. There's Kutztown right there. Let me switch this up to the satellite image. This is the same blue line, and you could see the coloration, where you see this lighter color. This is very farm oriented, and where it's darker, it's more wooded. And this portion right here is the most dark, and it's the most wooded because this goes over the steepest part of the ridge. This is all Appalachian, and so this is more of a valley area where farms would be, and this is more on the ridge, so you go up and over this ridge. This is a close-up of it, and you can see how dark it is. And so this is very wooded, and this road is like, I mean, this is straight out of like Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I'm driving it on Halloween around midnight in the most like natural setting in the heart of like the witchcraft capital. And I'm just aware of all of this. I'm aware that this is going on. I'm like, well, what's going to happen? Like, I'm excited about this. I'm like, kind of like, you know, it's a joyful experience because I like the adventure, if you will, of the narrative of life. Not knowing what I'm looking for, but just curious to see if anything would happen. Likewise, and based upon what happened the previous year. So I showed you some of the thumbnails of the most recent videos I made. And prior to that, the videos I made in August and September were all about my trip to Hispaniola. And I really delved into this character, Baron Simundi, who is associated with the underworld of within Haitian voodoo, within the practice of voodoo. This is, if you will, like the lord of, or the god of, or the keeper of the underworld. And it's a picture of Baron Samhain from one of these videos which I had made. I think it's from this video right here. So I had already been, if you will, I don't know if I necessarily want to use the word invoking, but recognizing that there's certain elements, whatever these things are. You know, if you want to subscribe to an idea that these are living entities, if you want to subscribe to an idea that these are egregores, if you want to subscribe to the idea that it's just a whole bunch of hogwash, or if you want to subscribe to the idea that it's something totally else, you know, I don't know. I just know that there's charge around these symbols, and they're tied to human form. And I had certainly been playing around with it. And so it shouldn't be any surprise that when I make this trip on Doug Samhain's birthday, a handful of days after going through the witchy area of the Pennsylvania Dutch on the witchy time of the year, that it also is going to tie in with this other work which has been building up as well. And what I mean by that is, within the Haitian holiday system, there's something, in pardon my French, Fête Gede. Am I pronouncing that correctly? That's the Haitian Day of the Dead, November 1st and 2nd. And Baron Samhain is a vital figure because he corresponds to this Day of the Dead, as he is the central figure, if you will. So there's this build-up, and there's this build-up, and there's this build-up, right? And I'm only coming here because I was invited to go on a podcast. You know, I did select the date. We were originally going to record the podcast in the spring, and I was going to record that in Marietta, and the day before the recording, Alec had to cancel it, and we pushed it back until the autumn, and then we knew that was going to be in November, and I just selected the 6th for whatever reason was my choice. There wasn't really much thought. I was given like 3 or 4 days to choose from. The 7th is when we recorded. I flew out on the 6th. All of this done way before any of this Hispaniola, before any of this, like anything as it related to Hurricane Milton, and this awareness between the previous video, the video I made in 2023. And so, where are we going to go with this? Do I have this? One of the ways in which the Day of the Dead is celebrated. Well, before I go there, let me just also add in this interesting piece to the equation, is that Elon Musk is of Pennsylvania Dutch ancestry. So, okay, going back to the Day of the Dead, particularly as it is celebrated in Mexico, is the significance of offerings. Providing offerings to ancestors, if you will. So I'm going to the Doug Sam Hill right after the Day of the Dead, in a way is symbolic of ancestry, in whatever ways this psychodrama, if you will, is unfolding. Like, I'm not realizing that I'm necessarily doing this at the time. It's only once I've returned home that I was able to really, as I say, unpack it and see what actually occurred. And the most significant thing that actually happened on my trip was that I lost an important part of my travels. I travel light, and that means I'm very thoughtful for whatever I bring. And I also have I have an appreciation to bags, objects used to carry other objects. And when I went down to Austin, I was very thoughtful for packing a very particular bag. It was a small clamshell Bellroy bag, for anyone who kind of knows about bags. It's a nice bag, probably about the size of your hand. And inside that, I had immensely personal objects. When I say personal objects, I mean things that had meaningful connections to me. This is where I was putting like my special stuff, if you will. And that bag disappeared. I had it when I got off the plane in Austin, and when I finally arrived at my destination of where I was staying the first night, that bag was nowhere to be found. At some point, I must have taken it out and did not put it back in. And that's not exactly how I do things. I tend not to misplace things like that. And what was inside of there was an MP3 player I've had since I first moved to Marietta. There's music and meditations and podcasts on that MP3 player that I've listened to countless times, which I probably won't be able to replicate. And I listened to it during a very specific point in my life, from the beginning of the Susquehanna mystery until the moment that I lost it. I had two important crystals. I have a bag, which I made, a tiny little bag with two crystals, actually one crystal and one seashell, and I carry that around with me. A leather ball, a ball which I made myself, which I always have by my side. Made that about 10 years ago as well. I have an oil. An oil is a fragrance, like a very specific fragrance I like to wear on my skin. Beard balm, something else very, very personal. And then hair ties. This is what was in that bag. And that bag was lost in Austin. And putting into context of all that is happening is like, that was my offering. Going through the Pennsylvania Dutch during that time period and going into Austin and actually like taking that walk with Emily. She was a phenomenal tour guide, and going up on the sacred hill, which resonates with this other sacred hill, which I've been on so many times, as how I would kind of characterize my life of being someone who lives outside of the paradigm, but still is coming in and out of it. I use technology, I fly, I have an automobile, I have a license. I don't put my energy into becoming free in that sovereign citizen sort of way. I put my energy into becoming free in a consciousness, energetic way. And from that level of reality, this is how I gave my offering, an immensely personal offering, to what the Day of the Dead represents. And considering that I had been slowly building a stronger and stronger connection with it, first through those videos and the experiences at the mound sites in St. Petersburg in 2023 during Day of the Dead, and then going to Hispaniola and really bringing this concept of Baron Sumundi into at least my consciousness, like I'm embodying it, and then lo and behold, I give an immensely personal offering. So what's the point of all this? Well, the point of all this is just, one, it's like, it's good storytelling. Two, there is there's a recognition for first me to myself, but then also as a demonstration to, anyone who's watching this, of the deeper order of this mysterious realm which we are having our life experience with. And I say mysterious, meaning that we just can't see it all. Like, it's a mystery. We don't understand fully what it is, what is the full nature of where we are. We may be able to gain clarity as to how it works, but what it is still a mystery. And then lastly, the demonstration is what happens when you are grounded in consciousness outside of the paradigm, and how does that bring you through life in a way you can't see, but it brings you to being in the right place at the right time in a way which you're just carried by life. And in a way, I guess you could say this has always been, what I just described, being carried by life as the mystic's path. The mystic being an individual who surrenders their life to the mystery. But what I'm going to suggest now is that this is a technique which is more significant than ever before. Because as I just showed in or demonstrated in this video, like, this is the future that's coming. We've got the MAPS technology. We've got the quantum computing AI centers just getting stronger and stronger. What are they going to do there? We can see the Neuralink is gaining speed. This is the reality which is coming down the pike. And so, particularly, if you are an individual who's watching this, there's some degree in which I'm presenting information or presenting a viewpoint of reality that is resonating with you. And what I think, or at least what I'm trying to do, is demonstrate that we can't understand what's coming, because of the mystery nature of reality, and then also because we have all been born into the paradigm that it's difficult to know how to navigate all of these things that are coming down the paradigm pike. But when you practice grounding consciousness outside of paradigm, which is mostly defined or fundamentally defined as becoming clear as to what is real time and what is false time, you're carried by forces outside of the paradigm, more foundational. So the last part of this video, I'm going to be talking about Dennis Rodman as an example of everything which grounding consciousness is, in perhaps like an easier way to see it. What I'm about to say is, I'm going to say the same principle of what I just demonstrated with you as it relates to going to Austin. And so it's going to begin with Dennis Rodman. And Dennis Rodman is a 6'7" former professional basketball player. But from a pop culture perspective, he might be best known for his relationship with the leader of North Korea, or his role in introducing men dressed in women's clothing on a mainstream sort of fashion, on a mainstream level. These pictures are probably from like 2010. This is much more commonplace. This guy kind of set the tonality in the mainstream world of what was to be normal and acceptable for dress. But Dennis Rodman is, outside of those areas, he is best known for being arguably the best rebounding forward in NBA history. And Dennis Rodman won 7 straight rebounding titles in the 1990s. He's recognized as one of the league's greatest players of all time. And what he was great at was rebounding. What a rebound is like when a shot is missed in basketball, everyone jumps up or fights to get that ball. That's the rebound. And to be the greatest of all time, you're bringing a quality which no one else is able to bring. That's why you're so good. That's an objective fact. Certainly there are elements such as size and tenacity, but there's something more which elevates you to this rare air of greatest. And at the end of the day, being a good rebounder is just being at the right place at the right time. Dennis Rodman, as arguably the best rebounder in professional basketball history, is also the best at being at the right place at the right time. So the question is, well, how did he do it? What was his practice? What did he do differently than everyone else that gave him this capability to get more rebounds than anyone else? Well, here's one thing. Dennis Rodman was known for counting the number of rotations a basketball made on its way to the rim when rebounding. Rodman's meticulous counting of ball rotations was a unique approach to rebounding that helped him become one of the top rebounders in the NBA. Here's a quote from one of his teammates, Isaiah Thomas. This dude was counting the rotations on the ball on every player. He knew how long it was going to be in the air, how many times it rotated, or where it hit and where it would bounce. Dennis Rodman was a flat-out genius. Now, I don't believe for a second that he was doing any sort of calculations. I think it's impossible to think that somehow by him watching the arc of the ball and recognizing the rotations that he does a calculation which therefore translates into where and when to jump. That just doesn't make sense. What does make sense is this is how the realm works. Where you place your rational mind, so that's your thinking mind, that's the meticulous counting. It doesn't matter what you're doing with your rational mind. It is the degree of focus and where you're using your rational mind. You are going to create a link between that outer world and your inner world. And then Dennis Rodman tied that to an intention, and his intention was to rebound or to be in the right place at the right time. And the dude was receptive. He was receptive for it to take him wherever it would take him. And that shows itself, in the very, very tangible, real way that this guy was always in the right place at the right time, that life carried him there based upon what he wanted. And so I've talked to you guys about this grounding consciousness course, which is beginning on December 1st. Gregorian calendar date, December 1st, and then also the new moon, which is going to be on December 1st too. They're overlapping. And this grounding consciousness course is not about you're going to learn a piece of information which will then help you in some way. What you're going to do is learn how to, quote unquote, meticulously count. No, we're not counting anything, but it's a way of using the rational mind to seeing the reality, the realm as it is, as defined by the movements of the heavenly bodies. Not for any purpose of gaining insight, but for the purpose of developing a link with life outside of the paradigm, so that you can move through the paradigm and being at the right place at the right time. Me losing my pouch as I go to Austin, which resonates with the High Point Scenic Vista on the Day of the Dead, when the offerings, personal offerings, are of high value. This is what the custom is to do at this time. That is an example of me based upon my intentions and my value systems of being in the right place at the right time, circumnavigating all of the stuff in paradigm that I'm just not interested in. And I was carried by life. Same is true with Dennis Rodman. And so you, my friends, who are interested in going deeper with this, I still have 9 spots left in this course. 9 spots are left in the course. I'm going to have 20 participants. 11 people have already signed up, and I want this to be a full course. And I want this to be a full course of people who can grasp the significance of what this is. Because I promise you, there's nothing like this which is being offered anywhere else. The price of it is $350. Before the Day of the Dead, before November 1st, I offered it at $300. If you're interested and you can't afford $350, send me an email. I want the right people here. I don't want money to stop you. But it is important that this class is full because I want to share this information, particularly with people who are committed to building a different reality. For this is a way to ground yourself and allow to create a very, very real co-creation with life. What I mean by co-creation is like you go do your step and life meets you as you step towards it. And you're doing it outside of all of the paradigm definitions. This is not an astrology course. You're not going to learn about all of the meanings of astrology. This is not an astronomy course. It is an integration of the two, which is based upon mystery and lack of contradiction. So for those of you who this speaks to, go and follow the link in the description of this video, the Linktree link. You can either find out more information, you can send me emails asking more information, or you can enroll. No matter what, I hope to see 9 new faces in this class. And that's the other thing. Like by doing this class live, we're able to break down this what I would say from my perspective, like this out of balanced relationship where I'm just providing information, but I don't get the feedback of talking to, people who are listening, who resonate with this information. In these classes, we have the opportunity to make that connection. So with that being said, my friends, I'm wrapping this one up. Hope everyone is doing well. And until the next time, this is mkwann checking out.